Dr. Sener Akturk, who joins us from Izmit. Sener is an Associate Professor of Political Science and International Relations. Thank you for your time, Sener. Briefly, if you could, give us a little bit of a history lesson and explain to us how the YPG has managed to take control of this part of northeastern Syria. It's not an ally of the regime of Bashar al-Assad, so how has it done this?
YPG, PYD is the Syrian affiliate of the PKK, and this is not a claim that only Turkey is making. In fact, that is their self-identification. So when you look at the YPG, PYD ideology statements, they always hail Abdullah Öcalan, the jailed leader of PKK, as their own leader. Upon the capture of Raqqa, from ISIS, they put up a giant picture of Abdullah Öcalan at the center of Raqqa and had a procession, had a demonstration around it, celebrating YPG, PYD victory. So the ideological, organizational, programmatic, and personnel connection between PYD, YPG and the PKK is indisputable, and that is also, as I've said, their self-identification. It's a Marxist-Leninist faction, which is a small minority within even Syria's Kurds. There are many concrete indications of the ideological minority status of the YPG within Syria's Kurds. I'll only give two dramatic examples, one personal and another one more demographic. It is often noted that hundreds of thousands of Syrian Kurds fled Syria, northeastern Syria, the territories of the northeastern Syrian territories that came under YPG, PYD rule, and they left those territories, they fled the YPG regime and came to Turkey. So in a way, hundreds of thousands, one estimate I saw today was 300,000, and that makes sense. That would make Syrian Kurds about 1/10 of the Syrian refugees in Turkey, and that's their proportion within Syria's population as well. So at around 300,000, fled the YPG regime. Kurds fled the YPG regime just for Turkey, and there are others who left for other countries, including Iraq and the Kurdish regional government in Iraq. So clearly, for many Kurds, and we are talking again about hundreds of thousands, living under YPG regime is not a desirable situation. In a way, they voted with their feet and preferred the Turkish regime and Turkey over YPG. A much more dramatic example is the elder brother of the leader of PYD. The leader of PYD, Salih, longtime leader of PYD, Salih Muslim, his elder brother, Mustafa Muslim, fled his brother's regime in Syria and came to Turkey already in 2015. And in many interviews, highly publicized interviews, he already gave in October 2015, exactly 4 years ago, actually, he indicated that the PYD, YPG only represent about 10% of Syria's Kurds. Maybe that's a slight understatement. Let's say it's 1/5. But still, we are talking about an ideological minority that is 1/5 of an ethnic minority that is already 1/10 of Syria's population. Something like 1 or 2% of Syria's population, that is the Marxist-Leninist PYG militia, armed to the teeth by the United States, financed, funded by Saudi Arabia and some other outside donors, was able to capture, with US Air Force support and Saudi financing, 30%, if not more, of Syria. So we are talking about a very minuscule ideological ethnic minority group that doesn't represent Syria's majority, but it doesn't even represent majority of Syria's Kurds, that through basically a pure military force, by mass deportations of Arab, Turkmen, and dissident Kurdish populations, was able to capture eastern bank of Euphrates, and even very significant portions on the west, both in the Raqqa province, but also in Deir ez-Zor, Manbij, and let's not forget also Tel Rifat, which is still the westernmost enclave that was captured by the PYD.
Sener, I really, really appreciate that, because it's an important point that needs to be made. And it also ties in, you're saying the YPG, the PYD, the PKK. Do all of these groups hide behind the value that is placed on their ethnicity in Western capitals? They're all Kurds, of course, right? Because this is really a point that is illustrated. We want to show the viewers a tweet that was posted just a few days ago by a member of parliament of the British ruling Conservative Party. This is James Heapy. He says, "We watched in awe as brave Peshmerga fighters fought ground battle against ISIS so that, frankly, Western troops didn't have to. Now a NATO ally is invading their homeland, sends all wrong messages to our enemies over cohesion of NATO and our view of rules-based international order." Do politicians in the West understand what's even going on? James Heapy here is talking about Peshmerga fighters. They were fighting mostly in Iraq. What's that got to do with Syria?
Exactly. So there are so many factual mistakes in this tweet, but let me try to go over each one of them one by one. First of all, the Peshmerga are actually the Kurdish fighters of the Kurdish regional government in Iraq, which, thanks to Turkey facilitating their passage into northern Syria, briefly fought in northern Syria. But here is the catch. Actually, the PYD, YPG regime and its leader, Salih Muslim, banned the entry of Peshmerga into northern Syria after this brief episode, because PYD, as I've said, a Marxist-Leninist vanguard party, does not want to share any power, military or political, with any other Kurdish party even, let alone Arab, Turkmen, Christian, Assyrian, Armenian groups. There are many, since 2014, 2015, Assyrian, Armenian organizations, as well as Turkmen, Arab, and dissident Kurdish individuals and groups have expressed their problems suffering under the PYD regime. And the Peshmerga, yes, they did fight, the Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga, with also the support of Turkey, especially during the fight around Ain al-Arab Kobani. But PYD regime actually doesn't allow anymore Peshmerga or the Kurdish Democratic Party of Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan, to have any say or presence in northern Syria, which is a very clear indication that even they do not want to share power even with other rival Kurdish political parties. So here we have a totalitarian one-party state in the making. I labeled the PYD PKK experiment as a belated Kurdish Soviet experiment in Syria and Turkey. Not because I have any, this is how they self-identify. Abdullah Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, openly has written over decades that they are continuing the work of the Bolshevik Revolution of October 1917, that they openly admire Lenin and Stalin, Joseph Stalin, as builders of communism, and that's what they want to replicate under conditions of 21st century in northern Syria, in southeastern Turkey, and elsewhere in the Middle East, wherever Kurds live. So the Peshmerga point I've tried to correct. And besides that, Turkish military, Turkish armed forces, along with Free Syrian Army, fought against ISIS and liberated not only El Bab, but also Dabuk. And Dabuk was extremely important from ISIS's point of view, symbolically and ideologically, because in their millenarian messianic vision, Dabuk was the city where the Armageddon, an equivalent of an Armageddon fight, was going to happen. So Turkish military and Free Syrian Army liberating Dabuk and El Bab, not PYD, but Free Syrian Army and the Turkish military, was a fatal blow, ideologically, symbolically, to ISIS. And so it wasn't only the Peshmerga, which are not PYD anyways, but it was also the Free Syrian Army and the Turkish military that carried the fight against ISIS and succeeded. succeeded in the fight against Daesh already in 2016.
Sener, really appreciate it,
Yes,
as
yes,
always.
Adnan.
Sener
You are very
Akturk, speaking to us from Izmit.